I was 13 years old the night I heard my mother say she wished I'd never been born. I wasn't supposed to be awake. It was past midnight, and I'd come downstairs for water when I heard voices in my father's study. The door was cracked open just enough for their words to slice through the darkness and cut straight into my chest. "We made a mistake, Richard. A terrible mistake." That was Linda, the woman I'd called Mom for 8 years. Her voice was sharp, bitter. "She's not what we thought she'd be. She's difficult, ungrateful, nothing like what we signed up for." I pressed myself against the wall, my bare feet frozen on the hardwood floor. "The therapist said she needs time to adjust," my father replied, but his voice lacked conviction. He sounded tired, defeated. "Time? It's been 8 years, Richard. 8 years of her sulking around, refusing to bond, making us look like failures. The Johnsons got a lovely girl, and the Petersons' son is at Princeton now. What do we have? A liability." That word landed like a punch. Liability. "What are you suggesting?" my father asked quietly. "I'm suggesting we cut our losses. There are programs. Group homes for difficult teens. We could say she's too troubled for us to handle. It's not a lie." Linda's voice dropped lower, conspiratorial. "We could start fresh. Maybe try again with a younger child. One without all this baggage." The glass of water I'd been holding slipped from my hand. It didn't break, just hit the carpet with a dull thud, but it was enough. The voices in the study went silent. I ran. Back up the stairs, into my room, under my covers. I lay there shaking, my heart hammering so hard I thought I'd be sick. When Linda opened my door 15 minutes later, I pretended to be asleep. She stood there for a long moment before closing it again softly. That was the beginning of the end. 3 weeks later, they sat me down in the living room. Linda had made tea, which should have been my first warning. She never made tea unless she was trying to soften bad news. "Darling," she began, and I noticed she couldn't quite meet my eyes. "Your father and I have been thinking about what's best for everyone. You've been struggling here, and we think you might be happier somewhere else. Somewhere with more structure. More support." "You're sending me away," I said flatly. Richard cleared his throat. "It's not like that, sweetie. It's a very good program. Lots of kids your age. They specialize in helping children who need a little extra guidance." "I don't need guidance. I need parents." My voice cracked on the last word, and I hated myself for it. "For showing weakness. For caring." Linda's face hardened. "Don't be dramatic, Claire. We've tried. We've really tried. But you've never let us in. You've never wanted to be part of this family." "That's not true." The words exploded out of me. I tried. I tried so hard. But nothing I did was ever good enough for you. Nothing. You see?" Linda gestured at me like I was evidence in a trial. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. This anger. This defiance. We can't help you anymore." I looked at my father, desperate. "Dad." He studied his hands. "We think it's for the best." That was it. The man who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd read me bedtime stories when I first came to live with them, who'd promised I'd always have a home, couldn't even look at me. I was placed in a group home 2 days later. Linda packed my things efficiently, like she was clearing out a closet. At the door, she gave me an awkward pat on the shoulder. "You'll understand when you're older," she said. "This is better for everyone." I didn't cry. Not then. Not when the social worker drove me away from the only home I'd known since I was 5. Not when I arrived at the gray building full of other unwanted kids. I'd learned early that tears were weakness, and weakness got you discarded. But that night, alone in a room with 3 other girls who'd also been thrown away, I made myself a promise. I was 13 years old, I had nothing, and no one wanted me. That would change. All of it. The group home was called Riverside Youth Center, but there was no river nearby and it centered on nothing except survival. The first night, a girl named Tasha told me the rules. Don't trust the counselors, don't leave your stuff unguarded, and don't let anyone see you cry. You look weak, you become a target. I nodded, absorbing everything. I was good at that, observing, learning. It was how I'd survived my first 5 years in the system before the Harringtons adopted me. Before they decided I wasn't worth keeping. School became my escape. Lincoln Middle School was overcrowded and underfunded, but it had a library, and the library had everything I needed. I read voraciously, anything I could get my hands on. Business books. Biographies of successful people. Investment guides way above my grade level. Mrs. Chen, the librarian, noticed. That's pretty advanced reading for 8th grade, she said one afternoon, eyeing the copy of The Intelligent Investor I was devouring. I like knowing how things work, I replied carefully. How money works. She studied me for a moment, then disappeared into her office. When she came back, she had 3 more books. Try these. And Claire? If you ever want to talk about what you're reading, I'm here. Mrs. Chen became my first ally. She never asked about my home life, never pitied me. She just kept feeding me books and knowledge, treating me like I was capable of understanding complex concepts. Because I was. I learned about compound interest, leveraged buyouts, corporate acquisitions, hostile takeovers. I learned that power in America wasn't about being the loudest or the strongest. It was about owning things. Controlling things. Having leverage. By the time I was 15, I had a plan. Not just a vague dream of revenge, but an actual, step-by-step blueprint. First, I needed money. Real money. I got a work permit and lied about my age to get a job at a diner, washing dishes 10 hours a week. Every penny went into a savings account I opened at a bank 3 miles from the group home. The counselors never knew about it. Second, I needed education. I studied like my life depended on it, because it did. Perfect grades weren't optional. They were ammunition. I took every AP class my high school offered. I joined the business club, the debate team, anything that built skills. Third, I needed to disappear. When the Harringtons had dumped me in the system, they told everyone I was troubled, difficult, a problem child. Their friends, their family, everyone in their social circle believed I was the one who'd failed. That narrative needed to stand. Let them forget about me. Let them think they'd successfully erased their mistake. Let them never see me coming. Mrs. Chun helped me apply for scholarships junior year. You're brilliant, Claire, she said, reviewing my applications. Don't let anyone make you think otherwise. My parents did, I said before I could stop myself. Your parents were fools. Her voice was firm. And one day, they'll realize it. But by then, you'll be so far ahead they won't be able to catch up. I got a full ride to State University. Business and finance double major. The day I got the acceptance letter, I walked past the Harringtons' house for the first time in 4 years. I didn't stop, didn't slow down. I just looked at that perfect colonial with its perfect lawn and its perfect shutters, and I smiled. See you soon, I whispered. College was where I truly learned to be dangerous. I wasn't the scared 13-year-old anymore. I was focused. Hungry. I worked 3 jobs, slept 4 hours a night, and graduated in 3 years instead of 4 with a 4.0 GPA. I interned at investment firms, boutique consulting companies. Anywhere that taught me how money moved and power shifted. My senior year, I met Marcus Webb. He was a guest lecturer, a self-made millionaire who'd built his fortune in private equity. After class, I approached him with questions. Smart questions. Questions that showed I'd done my homework. You're sharper than most of my analysts, he said, amused. What's your story? I told him a version of it. Not the emotion, just the facts. Foster care. Group home. Working my way through school. And what do you want? He asked. To win, I said simply. Always. He hired me on the spot. Working for Marcus was like getting a PhD in financial warfare. He taught me to see businesses as chess pieces, to identify weak spots, to move capital with surgical precision. I was 21 and learning to dismantle companies, restructure debt, and acquire controlling interests in struggling enterprises. The key, Marcus told me over lunch one day, is knowing more about your target than they know about themselves. Information is the real currency. I thought about the Harringtons. About their family business, Harrington and Associates, a mid-sized commercial real estate firm that Richard had inherited from his father. I'd kept tabs on them over the years. Nothing obvious, just periodic internet searches, public records checks. Enough to know they were still doing well. Still living their perfect life. Still convinced they'd made the right choice. What if it's personal? I asked Marcus. The target. He smiled. Business is always personal. People just pretend it's not. At 23, I left Marcus's firm with his blessing, a solid network, and enough capital to start my own investment company. I called it Crestview Capital. Bland. Forgettable. Perfect. I started small, buying distressed properties, flipping them, building a portfolio. I was patient. Methodical. I learned to hide behind LLCs and shell corporations, to move money in ways that left no obvious trail back to me. Not illegal, just smart. Private. By the time I was 26, I was worth $3 million. Not enough. Not yet. I hired investigators. Not to do anything shady, just to compile information. Public information. Tax liens. Business filings. Court records. Credit reports available through legal channels. I learned everything about Harrington and Associates. Their properties. Their debts. Their deals. And I learned they were struggling. Richard had made bad investments during the 2008 recession. Over-leveraged properties. Bad timing. He'd recovered somewhat, but the company never quite regained its footing. They looked successful on the surface, but the foundation was cracked. Perfect. I was 28 when I made my first move. Harrington and Associates had outstanding debts with 3 different lenders. I quietly bought those debts at a discount through shell companies. Now I owned their obligations. They didn't know it yet, but I had leverage. Over the next 2 years, I tightened the noose incrementally. Called in loans at strategic moments. Forced refinancing at higher rates. Nothing obvious, nothing that pointed to a pattern. Just normal business pressure. They started missing payments. Defaulting on contracts. Their reputation suffered. At 30, I learned they were looking for investors. The business was hemorrhaging money, and they needed capital infusion to survive. They were putting out quiet feelers, trying not to look desperate. I waited 6 months. Let them get more desperate. Let the pressure build. Then I had my lawyer make contact. I was 31 when I walked into the conference room at Harrington and Associates for the first time in 18 years. Linda saw me first. She was older, her hair gray now, lines around her mouth. She glanced at me without recognition, then looked back at her papers. Richard was talking to their attorney, looking strained and tired. I sat down at the far end of the table. Professional. Composed.
Είδε δρασακαραφούλη.
A tailored navy suit, minimal jewelry. Hair pulled back. All business. Their lawyer, a nervous man named Ted, cleared his throat. Thank you all for coming. As you know, we have a potential investor interested in Harrington and Associates. This is Ms. Claire Donovan, representing Crestview Capital. I'd changed my last name legally at 18. One of many steps in making myself invisible to them. Richard looked at me, polite but confused. Ms. Donovan. Thank you for your interest. Though I have to admit, we're not familiar with Crestview Capital. We prefer to operate quietly, I said smoothly. Private equity. Strategic acquisitions. We've been watching your company for some time. That's flattering, Linda said, though she sounded uncertain. What exactly are you proposing? I opened my folder. I'm proposing a significant capital investment in exchange for majority ownership. 51%. The room went silent. Majority. Richard sputtered. That's not what we were looking for. We need an investor, not a takeover. I understand. But given your current debt structure and market position, I'm afraid you don't have many options. I slid copies of financial statements across the table. Documents they thought were private. You're 3 months from bankruptcy. Your creditors are losing patience. Your reputation is damaged. You need more than money. You need restructuring. And I can provide that. Richard's face went pale. How did you get these? Public records, mostly. Credit reports available to potential investors. Standard due diligence. I kept my voice neutral. Professional. The question isn't how I got them. The question is whether you want to save this company or watch it die. Linda was staring at me now, something flickering in her eyes. Recognition trying to surface. This is extortion, she said. No, Mrs. Harrington. This is business. You're free to decline my offer. Of course, if you do, I'll be forced to call in the loans you owe to my subsidiary companies, which would accelerate your bankruptcy timeline significantly. Your subsidiaries? Richard's voice was faint. I smiled. I own your debt. All of it. I've been acquiring it for the past 3 years. So you see, this isn't really a negotiation. It's a courtesy. Who are you? Linda whispered. I stood up, walked around the table slowly, stopped right behind Richard's chair, leaned down so my words fell directly into his ear. Don't you recognize me, Dad? The sound he made was almost inhuman. Linda actually stumbled backward, knocking into the wall. No, she breathed. No, you're a liability? I finished. That's what you called me, wasn't it? The night before you threw me away. I straightened up, smoothed my jacket. Turns out, I prefer the term acquisition. Richard turned in his chair, looking up at me with horror. Claire. Oh my God. Claire. Ms. Donovan in this room, please. I returned to my seat, crossing my legs. Now, let's discuss terms. I'm taking majority ownership. You'll both remain as employees, not executives. Salaries will be reduced to market rate for your actual contributions, which, based on performance, isn't much. You can't do this. Linda's voice was shaking. We're your parents. No. The word came out cold. Hard. You were my parents. For 8 years. Then you decided I was too difficult, too damaged, too much trouble. So you erased me. I leaned forward. Did you tell people I died? Or just that I was too troubled to keep around? Linda opened her mouth. Closed it. No answer. That's what I thought. I pulled out a contract. This is non-negotiable. You sign, the company survives under my leadership. You refuse, I call in your debts tomorrow, and you lose everything anyway. At least this way, you keep some income. Some dignity. Why? Richard's voice broke. Why are you doing this? I looked at him for a long moment. The man who couldn't meet my eyes when he sent me away. Who chose his wife's comfort over his daughter's life. Because I could, I said simply. Because you taught me that people are disposable when they're inconvenient. You were right. They are. I stood up, gathered my papers. You have 48 hours to decide. My lawyer will be in touch. At the door, I paused. Looked back at them, these people who'd once been my whole world. They looked small now. Broken. Old. One more thing, I said softly. I want you to know that every step of the way, every success I've had, every dollar I've made, I was thinking about this moment. About you sitting here, realizing that the unwanted little girl you discarded became the person who owns you. Linda was crying now. Silent tears running down her face. I don't want revenge for revenge's sake, I continued. I want you to understand that you didn't break me. You made me. Every cold night in that group home, every time someone pitied me, every obstacle you thought would destroy me, I turned it into fuel. You thought you were cutting your losses. You were creating your ruin. I walked out. Didn't look back. They signed the papers. Of course they signed. They had no choice, and they knew it. My lawyer called 46 hours later to confirm. The next Monday, I walked into Harrington and Associates as majority owner and CEO. I gutted the place. Not maliciously. Strategically. I brought in my own team, restructured the entire operation, cut the deadweight. Half the staff was let go. Richard and Linda were moved to a small shared office in the back, given grunt work, research, and filing. The kind of tasks entry-level employees usually handled. Linda tried to confront me the first week. "This is humiliating," she hissed, catching me in the hallway. "You're parading us around like failures. People are talking." "Are they?" I didn't slow down. "That must be difficult for you. Being seen as less than perfect." "We made a mistake," she said desperately. "We were wrong." "Is that what you want to hear? We should never have sent you away." I stopped. Turned to face her fully. "You're right. That is what you should have done. Kept me. Loved me. Been the parents you promised to be." I kept my voice low. Calm. "But you didn't. And now here we are. So no, Linda, I don't want to hear that you're sorry. Because you're not. You're just sorry you got caught. That's not fair." Neither was abandoning a 13-year-old child. I stepped closer. "You're going to work here. You're going to do what I tell you. And every single day, you're going to remember that this happened because you taught me that family means nothing. That love is conditional. That people are disposable." Her face crumpled. "You've become cruel." "No. I've become powerful. There's a difference." Richard tried a different approach. Showed up at my office one evening with 2 coffees, trying to play the father card. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Really talk?" I gestured to the chair across from my desk. Waited. "I've been thinking a lot," he started. "About what we did. How we handled things. You were just a child and we failed you." "Yes. You did. I want you to know I think about it. All the time. I wonder who you might have become if we'd been better." "I know exactly who I became," I said. "The person who owns your life's work." He flinched. "Is there any part of you that can forgive us?" I considered the question. Really considered it. Looked at this man who'd once felt like safety, like home. Who'd promised I'd always belong. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "Maybe one day. But right now, I need you to understand what you did. Not just say you're sorry. Understand." "I'm trying." "Are you?" I leaned back. "Do you know what it's like to be 13 years old and hear the people you love call you a mistake? To be sent away like damaged goods? To spend years wondering what was wrong with you? Why you weren't worth keeping?" His eyes filled with tears. "Claire." "I was a child," I said, my voice breaking despite myself. "A scared, lonely child who just wanted to be loved. And you threw me away because I was inconvenient." "I know." He was crying now too. "I know. And I hate myself for it. Every day." "Good," I said coldly. "Live with it. Like I had to." The months passed. I transformed Harrington and Associates into something efficient, profitable. Stripped it down to its valuable assets, sold off the weak properties, acquired better ones. Within a year, the company was in the black. Richard and Linda kept working for me. They had no choice. They needed the income, and I'd made sure every other door was closed. I'd quietly let it be known in their social circles that they were working for their former adopted daughter. That the child they discarded now controlled their lives. The pity they'd once directed at me turned on them instead. I saw Linda break down in the bathroom once. She didn't know I was there. She was sobbing into her hands, mascara running, the perfect facade completely shattered. I almost felt something. Almost. Then I remembered being 13, sitting in that group home, wondering why I wasn't good enough to love. I walked past without a word. But something was shifting in me. Revenge, it turned out, wasn't as satisfying as I'd thought it would be. Oh, it felt good initially. The moment they realized who I was, the looks on their faces, that was pure vindication. But watching them suffer day after day started to feel hollow. Empty. Marcus noticed when we met for lunch. You got what you wanted, he observed. So why don't you look happy? I am happy. Liar. He smiled slightly. I know that look. That's the look of someone who reached the mountaintop and realized the view wasn't what they expected. I pushed my food around my plate. They destroyed me. No, they didn't. You're sitting here, successful, powerful, in complete control. Richard stood up, hesitated, then held out his hand. Thank you. For whatever this is. I looked at his hand for a long moment. Thought about the 8-year-old girl who'd held that hand, trusted it, loved it. I shook it briefly. Professionally. Goodbye, Richard. Linda. They left. I watched them go, these ghosts from my past, finally fading into people I used to know. The company sold for $8 million. I walked away with a substantial profit and a reputation as a shrewd investor. Started a new firm. Focused on helping struggling companies turn around, on finding opportunities where others saw only failure. I was 32 years old, successful beyond my wildest dreams, and finally free. Mrs. Chin came to my office warming party. She was retired now, gray-haired and smiling. I always knew you'd do something remarkable, she said, looking around at my new space. You gave me the tools, I replied. Those books. That belief. No, sweetheart. You did that yourself. I just didn't get in your way. Last month, I got an email. From Linda. I know I have no right to reach out, it began. But I wanted you to know that Richard and I are volunteering at a youth center. Working with kids in foster care. It doesn't make up for what we did to you. Nothing could. But we're trying to do better. To be better. I hope you're well. You deserve every bit of happiness you found. Linda. I stared at that email for a long time. Then I hit reply. Linda, thank you for letting me know. I hope you helped those kids in ways you couldn't help me. Maybe that's growth. Maybe that's redemption. I don't know yet. But I'm willing to find out. Claire. I didn't send a long message. Didn't offer reconciliation or forgiveness. Just acknowledgement. A door opened a crack, not wide, but enough. Maybe one day I'll walk through it. Maybe I won't. But that's the thing about power, real power. It's not about revenge. It's not about making people pay. They tried to destroy you. They failed. So what now? Now you decide who you want to be. The person who holds a grudge forever? Or the person who wins and moves on? I thought about that conversation for weeks. I'd spent 18 years building toward this moment. 18 years of planning, studying, working, climbing. All to make two people suffer the way they'd made me suffer. And they were suffering. I saw it every day. Richard looked 10 years older than he should. Linda barely spoke anymore unless required. They'd lost everything that mattered to them, their business, their reputation, their pride. I'd won. Completely. Utterly. Devastatingly. So why did I feel so tired? One evening, I called them both into my office. They came in looking wary, expecting another humiliation. Sit, I said. They sat. I looked at them for a long moment. These people who'd once been my world. Who'd broken my heart so thoroughly I'd spent half my life rebuilding myself. I'm selling the company, I said. They stared at me in shock. To whom? Richard finally managed. To a consortium I've put together. Fair market value. The deal closes in 30 days. I slid 2 envelopes across the desk. These are your severance packages. Generous ones. Enough to retire comfortably if you're smart with it. I don't understand, Linda whispered. I'm done. The words felt strange in my mouth. Final. I got what I came for. I proved my point. Now I'm moving on. Just like that. Richard's voice was thick with emotion. After everything? After everything, I agreed. I could keep you here forever. Keep making you pay. But that makes me as bad as you were. So this is it. You're free. Linda started crying. Again. Always crying now. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. If I could take it back. But you can't. I kept my voice gentle but firm. You can't take it back, and I can't give you forgiveness you haven't earned. Maybe one day. Maybe never. But I'm not carrying this anymore. It's about choosing. Choosing who you become. Who you forgive. Who you let go. They threw me away when I was 13, called me a liability, erased me from their perfect life. 15 years later, I owned everything they'd built. I had the power to destroy them completely. And I chose to walk away instead. That's the power they never taught me, never imagined I'd find. The power to be better than they were. To win without becoming what I hated. I'm 33 now. I run a company worth $50 million. I mentor kids aging out of foster care. I live in a penthouse that overlooks the city that once seemed so impossible to conquer. And sometimes, late at night, I think about that 13-year-old girl. The one who hurt herself called a mistake. Who was discarded like garbage. I want to tell her that she made it. That she survived. That she won. But more than that, I want to tell her that she deserved better. That she was never the problem. That she was always enough. They threw me away. I turned into the one holding all the cards. And then I chose to put those cards down and walk away. That's not the ending I planned 18 years ago. But it's the one I needed. They thought they were throwing away their mistake. They were creating their reckoning. But I became something neither of us expected. I became free.